Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the January 13, 2016 Criminal Justice Meeting. If you would please stand. And Howard, you want to lead us in?
Yes. Put your hands over your heart and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm sorry, Britt. Went out of roll. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Brown. Carter.
Present.
Harris.
Present.
Herr. Rodriguez. Vice Mayor, Vice Chairman Little.
Present.
Chairman Vieira. We have a quorum.
Fantastic.
Mr. Vice Chair, the Commissioner Brown did call in. He will be a couple minutes late.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Well, we don't have to do the Pledge of Allegiance. We just did it, right? So I did it out of order there. I apologize. City of Lancaster presentations. Mr. DeRico, sir.
Good morning, Vice Chair Little, Commissioners. I wanted to give you a little update on where we're at with some history back on our Prop 47 ordinance, how we enacted last year, and some of the things that are currently taking place on our full implementation of that program now. Just some background, interesting, and I think we've had many discussions in here, and so has the Sheriff's Department, and law enforcement, and the District Attorney regarding issues related to the implementation of Prop 47 and some of the cause and effect that's having in the area. I would like to first give you some numbers for the first 3 quarters of the year, just from the Sheriff's Department, from primarily Lancaster Station and the impact of arrests that Prop 47s have, as well as repeat offenders, and then some regionally. In Lancaster, the total in the first 3 quarters of 2015, there were 818 arrests related specifically that were Prop 47 bound arrests. So those were cases that typically would have been more significant charges that were reduced and handled through Prop 47. Of those, the most significant impact is almost 700 of those were all drug-related charges. So simple possession of certain narcotics that have been reduced to by Prop 47 were also managed not for diversion, and there's some numbers that relates to that. So typically in the past, that individual would go through a Prop 36 program, get 18 months of diversion programs, and then the case would be exonerated. And as some of the articles I provided for you, even through the LA Times, they've talked to different cities and where the impact of less than probably 6 to 7% of those individuals now are seeking drug treatment. Okay. Of those 818 arrests, 250 of the individuals are repeat offenders with multiple cases that fall under the guise of Prop 47. And the total charges by those offenders was 540. So of 250 people, the charges that were filed were 540 individual charges. And they run the gamut. The majority of them, once again, are narcotics related, but they go through the entire process of the Penal Code and Health and Safety Code with robbery, ag assaults, burglary, larceny, theft, grand auto, theft auto, forgery, non-sufficient funds, sex offenders, non-aggravated assaults. But again, the big number that sticks out is as it relates to narcotics. So of the repeat offenders, 190 of those charges alone were narcotics related. So that tells you the impact as we look at larcenies and things that drive our numbers here in our city. Narcotics is still, having a significant impact, which will probably lead into a further discussion we're going to have later on this meeting. Regionally, for the North Division, there have been 3,563 cases that were Prop 47 related alone just in the region in the first 3 quarters of the year. Of those, 1,026 of them were repeat offenders. And those repeat offenders were responsible for 2,248 of those cases. that were filed. So that's pretty significant impact if you look just as a small grouping of sections that were related to Prop 47 and the impact it's having on resources in the community. So those numbers I have not provided for you, but I will get those to you as those are published for the full year. Okay, that will be coming up for the last quarter of the year. And then just the articles I gave you were ones we've probably talked about. The individual who didn't become a thief until after Prop 47 started stealing bicycles, LA Times article. Okay, and it actually talks about some cases that are occurring all over, and that's what I thought was interesting, the article on different cities in Pasadena and the impact in Glendale and those as well that are in there. The other thing is the Times article that regarded that Prop 47 was voters were sold a bill of goods, and it discusses the issues related to non-rehabilitation and those things as well that is not required under Prop 47. So specifically what that brings us to is based on an ordinance that went into place last March and through a large vetting process, we've gone in development of a program. We implemented in our two of our largest retail stores our Prop 47 ordinance as it relates to administrative sites and basically for petty theft, for shoplifting. Okay, and I can give you some numbers as that relates. In the 4 months of the year that the implementation took place, just in those two stores, there were over 100 petty thefts that occurred where a person was detained. Of those, 28 required a sheriff response because there was other issues beyond just the scope of the petty theft. In other words, there were other issues that were related to it. Of those, 13 were arrested by the sheriff's department. So that meant 72 people that were detained were potentially going to be cited and prosecuted under the administrative cite program as we move through that process. So again, the store detains the individual, they write their victim statement of facts, they follow a process and protocol that we've developed and given to them, and based on that information, there's a determination made by them whether or not there's some other extracurricular issue that the sheriff's department needs to be contacted. We collect that information from them, and then we vet that individual based on discussions that we've had with the district attorney and the sheriff's department, county council regarding that person's background, if that would require a further type of charge related to their past history, and if not, then we move forward through the administrative process, and that's where we're at right now. So you can see just alone, if you look at the scale of how deputy sheriffs cost $2.02 a minute based on our contract rate, the significant resource management tool this has become by deferring those 72 cases in a different way. To already existing staff, we haven't hired anyone new to manage those. We're managing those through the Assistant City Attorney's Office as well as Public Safety Office, and we're moving forward with that process. So as we see this moving forward, we're going to start expanding this. I have a goal to move into another large retailer here in the next month or two for implementation. We're working through some issues with the larger two chains. We're working with their corporate office on the impact for them as far as their resource management. But the positives for them is we don't get in a long detention response issue, especially as it relates to juveniles. We don't have deputy sheriffs who have to take control of a juvenile and sit on them for several hours while they have to wait to have a responsible person or guardian respond for that at the station for that child. There's all kinds of positives that relate to this, how it impacts on both sides. City resources, sheriff's department resources, as well as the business's resources and time. So just a kind of a brief update on where we're at with that, and as we move forward, I'll be bringing that to you probably monthly statistically how that is being managed. Any questions?
I have one question for you. In your estimation, are the schools safer? Are the streets safer? Or is Prop 47 a colossal failure?
It's a colossal failure. Without hesitation, I will tell you it is a giant, colossal failure.
Shocking. Thank you.
Any other questions?
One other thing so with the administrative process certainly seems to save resources on the one hand. Do you think it's providing a deterrent effect?
Well, I can tell you that people are coming into the counter and paying the citations aren't very happy. And I'm sure, especially as it's related to, like, on our social host aspect for parties, where especially as young people decide when their parents out of town to have a party at their house and then their parents get saddled with a $500 fine. It's pretty significant on probably changing that behavior. Now, I will tell you that moving forward, we have issues with diversion and things that we're already practicing with juveniles, so this gives us another direct course of action to be able to manage with juveniles because, again, if we have that first or second time offender, obviously we don't want to place people in the criminal justice system unnecessarily if we can change that behavior. As it relates to adults, so $500 is $500. I mean, you know, I wouldn't want to have to look what people do in lieu of traffic tickets. You know, the average traffic fine now with penalty and assessment ends up being about $500. You know, that's a significant impact on some folks. So I think the point is to change that mindset. Now, if it doesn't, again, the city, as we've talked about and discussed in the past, has a whole nother recourse that we utilize for collection of those fines that impact people on a resource level. In other words, through their state franchise tax, DMV fees, licensing, all kinds of things that the city can do to restore the city's resources.
I have another question, kind of a piggyback to my last one. Since the schools aren't safe, since the streets aren't any safer, is there any talk in the Attorney General's office, and this is probably a better question for you, about repealing this ridiculous prop? I mean, I think just in the time that the ordinance, that the prop has been on the books, it's proven itself to not do what it was titled, keep schools and streets safe. Mm-hmm. So is there any discussion on repealing?
About, as far as I know, and it's probably better for Senator Runner's representative, but I believe that as far as a wholesale rescission, I haven't heard, you know, of anything such as that. They may be doing it piecemeal, maybe modifying a tiny piece here and there, but I wouldn't hold out any undue hope.
Okay, and just for clarification's sake, based on that Safety Act, you know, the resource savings that the state is incurring as it relates to this aren't even set for implementation till way later this year, as far as funneling that money back in for programs. The other thing is I'd just like to clarify, as far as the safety of our community individually, the one thing I can tell you very proudly and through the hard work of the Sheriff's Department and the deputies that work in our area, in spite of all these issues, the self-initiated activity rate of our law enforcement group in our city is 40 to 50% higher than any other station in the county. So even in the face of all these things with DOJ's implementation and restriction, AB 109, non-revocable parole, Prop 47, the deputies are still out there putting the numbers up there. Okay, it's just what is taking place based on the legislation as it relates to that. So the activity level is huge.
My concern with that, though, is even though, you know, our Sheriff's Department does a phenomenal job, and I respect each and every one of them, at what cost? At what cost is Prop 47 and AB 109 causing the city to incur?
Yes.
Because we cannot put criminals where they rightfully belong, and that is in jail.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely been pushed down to the local level, and it's become a more local level centralized issue, and that goes along with the resources as well. We're managing more issues with no resources being provided to do that. Okay. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Lee, I have a question.
Yes.
If the rate will affect on a crime, what will be?
Well, I think what is done as far as larcenies seem to drive our Part 1 number, and it's pretty interesting when you look at how crime is categorized. You know, being petty thefts would be considered a Part 1 crime. It is helping us as far as impacting those numbers and be able to divert those cases and manage them differently through an administrative process. And to be quite honest with you, it is an opportunity for the city to recover some of their funding as it relates to those responses. It's similar to what we've done with chronic nuisance. If we have habitual properties that are a drain on resources, we want to impact them to restore the public's money. Because let's remember, the city's money is the community's money. It's not just some money that just falls out of the sky. It's provided by the citizens of this community. So we have a responsibility to make them whole. So what it doesn't do is it doesn't save us money on our sheriff contract. In other words, we don't get a discount based on the lesser number of calls. But what it does allow us to do is use those resources in a better manner within our community for more significant impact for victims of crime. And that's really where the focus goes. So those 72 non-responses for something that typically would tie a deputy's time up for, a minimum of an hour, maybe longer, can be better utilized to impact other issues that are occurring in the community.
And two, Mr. Drew, wouldn't you say with the area that we have to cover, or the sheriff's department has to cover in this area, it's astronomical?
Absolutely. We are
I mean,
a very
it's-
large
it's-
city geographically.
Yeah, and I'm sure we get tons of help from over the hill when it comes to that.
No.
No, so, yeah.
We're pretty independent.
We're pretty
As far,
independent.
and that is for all the agencies that exist here.
Right.
Okay, we're kind of on an island here. So, and typically that's how we become very good, and our council has the foresight to do things and get ahead of issues.
So it's important that the general public understands the area that's being dealt with, plus the municipality as far as sheriff board boosters that help out with city. It helps out with the local sheriff, so it's important that they understand that. Is this information here available to the citizens as far as?
That is actually from LA Times' website.
Is it?
I got
Was
those
it?
from Jocelyn, actually.
It's pretty good. It's really
Yeah,
good.
they're
Jeff.
excellent.
It's very good.
And,
It's
she-
good stuff.
But I will tell you, she daily brings articles in from the LA Times that are quite interesting on local issues in California as far as our statewide issues.
Yeah,
And it is with some of the legislation that's coming forward that we'll be discussing further today. It's quite insightful to see. Now, it's interesting to read the LA Times, though, because there's quite some contradiction within the own paper from one page to the next on the same issue. So it's quite interesting.
No, very, very good stuff. That very interesting information. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Moving along, public business from the floor. Citizens who would like to address the Criminal Justice Commission may do so on any agendized items and is being considered by the commission. Please complete a speaker card, give it, and identify on what you'd like to assess on, and individual speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Excuse me. We have the minutes from December 9th meeting. Is that right? Has everyone had a chance to review those? Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Second? Would everyone like to vote? Okay, moving along. As we see in front of new business, we have a recommendation from the City Council regarding the adoption of urgency ordinance amending Chapter 1704, Title 17 of Lancaster Municipal Court, prohibiting medical marijuana dispensaries and cultivation or delivery of marijuana. Does anyone, go ahead, Jocelyn. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Would you mind if we presented from our chairs here?
Absolutely, whatever you'd like.
Thank you. So, in about October of last year, the governor signed 3 pieces of legislation concerning medical marijuana and the licensing and regulation of commercial medical marijuana activities, including dispensary operations, delivery, and cultivation, indoor and outdoor cultivation. Those laws came into effect January 1. They allow for the state to establish a licensing and regulating program to allow such commercial activity, and any city that does not have an ordinance in effect that expressly prohibits cultivation or expressly prohibits the delivery of medical marijuana within the city loses its local control of those issues, and the state becomes the sole licensing and regulatory body. The city, we do not currently have anything on the books concerning medical marijuana, so we're recommending an urgency ordinance so that it is in effect before March 1st, which is the deadline for the cultivation ordinance to be in effect. In order to retain local control and give the city more time to more fully discuss and develop the concept of whether reasonable regulations could be adopted, we're proposing a complete prohibition on dispensary operations, on delivery, and on the indoor and outdoor cultivation of marijuana. Because at the federal level, marijuana is still considered a Schedule I controlled substance, equivalent to heroin and LSD and others. As a result of the conflict between federal and state and local laws, By necessity, medical marijuana and the commercial medical marijuana business is primarily a cash-only business. Dispensaries can't open bank accounts because banks are subject to federal law and can lose their authority to operate if they help promote criminal activity. So therefore, as a cash-only business, dispensaries are a huge magnet for crime. Lee's going to go into some details and some anecdotal evidence that we have concerning just one after another of dispensaries being robbed, of couriers being targeted, of grow houses being broken into. So from staff's perspective, at least right now, the concern is not the marijuana itself. We're not making any judgment at this point on whether marijuana has any medical benefit to individuals. It's purely to protect public safety and to retain local control. So I believe that you've had an opportunity to review the ordinance. If you have any questions, I'm welcome. I welcome them. But I'd like to let Lee speak a little bit about the public safety aspect first.
Well, I can see historically, as you've seen here in the state of California, is that the implementation of some collectives. If you specifically talk about incidents in Northern California, where in certain counties the murder rates have gone up 400% to 500%, where you actually have an active members who know these collectives exist, they make entry into them, they rob the collective of the marijuana that's collected that's legally cultivated and manicured there, and then they kill several individuals. So certain counties who have very sparse populations or rural areas have seen significant increases around those collectives. The other thing is we have significant incidents that occurred in Los Angeles, just in highlighting some. Several of them, like in 2012, a person delivering medical marijuana was robbed at gunpoint. After robbing the victim of medical marijuana, the suspects attempted to take the victim's car. The suspects were later arrested and marijuana containers were recovered as well as a firearm. And also in 2012, a woman was delivering medical marijuana at a residence. She was robbed at gunpoint, forced inside the residence, which was vacant. The suspects took the marijuana from the victim and attempted to take her vehicle. Another one. In November of 2012, a man was delivering marijuana for a dispensary. At the location of the delivery, he was robbed, forced inside a vacant residence. He was taken inside to a room inside of the location, and again, they tried to steal his car. In 2012, a dispensary under the name of Health Bud Pro opened into a converted automobile repair shop here locally. In 2013, an armed robbery took place at the dispensary. During the investigation of that crime, the dispensary owner stated the business made $10,000 a month. A second armed robbery took place in February of 2013. During the fall of 2013, we received complaints of marijuana out of a residence in West Lancaster. The investigation took place. They had an actual marijuana grow that was taking place in a vacant home. Okay, that was a series of issues we were having where people would jump the electrical meters and set up a grow house within all the rooms of a vacant home on a bank repossession, but the bank hadn't taken possession of it. And then, I mean, I could probably go on. You know, we have some that are in the unincorporated county area or in adjacent counties, and the numbers of individuals in and out of those places and the crime that takes place around those centers can be documented. And so I think what's more of the discussion that we're having here is, again, as Jocelyn said, the city's not in a position, and the intent of the ordinance is not to pass judgment on folks that use marijuana for medical purposes or that are in pain or those issues. The fact is that based on the law, we have a time constraint on maintaining local control of those issues so we can speak for our own community. And I'm sure we can hear testimony after testimony from law enforcement as it relates to marijuana, because we have this issue with marijuana that everyone looks at it as basically an insignificant issue as it relates to the acceptance level. The reality of it is the cause and effect of today's marijuana versus what it was 15, 20 years ago is significantly different, okay, as we're seeing those issues. So some of the cause and effect out there that's related. The other thing is that being a former narcotics detective myself, is a large percentage of our crime is based on narcotics, and it's to obtain those narcotics. And while we may have all these things that are legally out there, they still cost money, okay, and how people obtain the money to purchase those things for those issues. Now, there are some things in here you'll see as it relates to pharmacies, those type of things, I think are appropriate based on what is written in the ordinance and based on what the will is of the council and the city manager's office. I think the urgency aspect of it is, and I wish we had more time to probably have more discussion, is the fact that we have to have it done all in place by March 1st or we lose the ability to manage it at a local level. And I think that's the most significant issue as it relates to that.
And if I can just expound for a moment on what Lee said, the ordinance does carve out exemptions. Licensed healthcare facilities and residential facilities and so forth are all exempted out. Individual qualified patients are not considered commercial marijuana operators, so they are exempt. And primary caregivers, as defined in the Health and Safety Code, are also exempt. So people who do find that they get a benefit from medical marijuana still have access to it and will not face consequences as a result of this ordinance.
I have a question. You're telling me that as a marijuana dispensary, you cannot have a DBA bank account because of the federal law. So none of these dispensaries have bank accounts. Everything is strictly cash.
It is my understanding that some dispensaries have had accounts. Some of the articles that we've read at least indicate that they open and close and open and close, because as soon as the bank determines that it's a dispensary where the cash is coming from, they have to shut it down. So although there is some revolving door aspect to the bank accounts, it is primarily a cash business. And we're talking about, I believe it's about a $700 million industry nationwide.
So a lot of companies that are sitting there doing DBAs or are incorporating and doing retail operations, they're still subject to where's this money coming from, obviously. And you see a lot of that coming down the pike. And,
yes.
And where do we stand? Where do we stand as far as there's so many little unincorporated areas within? See, we got unincorporated pockets throughout the whole Antelope Valley. So where does that stand as far as is the city of Los Angeles going to adopt something similar, or they just come and said this is your problem, and this is our rule. Here's your rule.
Obviously, our ordinance only applies within our boundaries.
Right.
That's our purview. The small pockets of unincorporated, I suspect that that's where we're going to find some of the activity already is occurring and will be occurring in the future. I don't know what the county intends to do about that. I've not heard.
Do we have any idea?
Policed? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Could that be policed, or is it, Lee, is that just something
Well,
that?
it could be policed based on the standpoint that whatever issue may be occurring, if it's purely as it relates to this statutory issue that's been implemented in January 1st, that would depend on what cause of action the county took. And then again, the state has some regulatory issues that are probably going to be coming into place too as well. So how that would apply. Now, obviously, you can't grow marijuana to sell to people that aren't, medically licensed to be able to obtain marijuana. There's other issues to address it, if that is. The thing is, we always work in the spirit of things here regionally in Lancaster Station's jurisdiction because everything has an impact on each other, right? We could have things that are occurring in the county that, if necessary, we can apply resources to at the Sheriff's Department's request because it has an impact on the city. And you're absolutely correct. We are unique in that manner here, that we have pockets of the unincorporated area within our area. And so I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure the county will take a position to have control based on the county and not allow the state to manage the county's area.
What I understand too, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm going to lose this train of thought.
Go ahead.
What I understand too, as far as delivery, there's a delivery that's being done in a lot of these co-ops or whatever retail operations. They cross the barrier. Is it considered illegal?
Yes.
Okay. So that pocket that is in LA County that has a dispensary or whatever, medical marijuana, whatever it may be, they cross the street, they're operating illegally. Okay.
What are we seeing other cities doing throughout LA County regarding this? I mean, are we on the forefront, or we're just joining in, or are we lagging behind?
some cities have been working to construct regulations to allow for dispensaries on some limited level. The city of Los Angeles, of course, has allowed dispensaries for some time. I think they're still working on really gaining control over it. Some cities are prohibiting it altogether and have essentially scrambled to adopt express language concerning delivery and cultivation. It's my understanding that a number of cities' ordinances did address delivery, but cultivation was never really considered. So the indoor and outdoor cultivation aspect of the new laws is something that has had to be addressed. And there's a split, really, in LA County between those cities that want to help people get their medical marijuana and those who want to retain local control and see how this shakes out. Frankly, nobody knows what the state program is going to look like. It hasn't even been developed yet. So it'd probably be useful for us to wait and see what happens at the state level as well. And meanwhile, keep it under our control and keep it prohibited until such time as we know how it's going to play out.
Well, I am in favor of this, but, it's a situation to where, as a business owner, the other thing that I see, I'm really stuck on the cash basis, because the state and all government agencies work based upon tax dollars. So you can almost be guaranteed that if there's no bank account, there's no taxes being paid. So, that's another leg that we need to look at, that there's no benefit to having this business as far as a municipality.
So
Good point.
So just to couch what we're looking at today, this is really more an administrative action to protect the city, so the city maintains control over its own business. It's non-judgmental in the aspect of what benefits may come from medical marijuana use. It's to give the city time to construct sensible rules and regulations to possibly allow the business transaction to take place based upon what federal and state law, how that winds up being shaped. So this is a protectionary measure for the city of Lancaster to protect its own interests.
That is exactly correct.
Thank you.
Well said.
Anything else, Dr. Brown?
So if I understand today, what's being asked is whether or not we make a recommendation to the city council to accept this ordinance.
Yes, that's correct.
And it would seem foolhardy that the city would miss its opportunity to maintain local control of whatever regulations it wants to put into place, and to default to the state to make those regulations for us. So it would seem to me I'd be certainly in favor of making that recommendation to the city council. Mr. Chris, do you have an idea what the city council might do?
I think we need to take control of our own destiny. That's the main thing that we're looking to do here. There's different propositions that are coming up in November that might change everything. So all we're trying to do is make sure that we have a say-so in our own destiny, make sure that, what we're looking at, and have the public input and to see what they say. But we need to take control of it. We can readjust this at any time. We can give direction to staff at a later time to look into this deeper, find some ways to make accountability for certain individuals or certain different things, and make it work at that time. So that would be my opinion.
So I would, if it's the appropriate time, I would move that we make a recommendation to the city council.
Yeah, I've got a couple cards, Dr. Brown. So let's, if there's no other questions at the moment with staff or anything else, I have a couple speaker cards. And Melanie Coker.
Okay, I'm nervous.
Don't be nervous. Welcome, Miss.
Okay, so
Among friends.
first of all, I've been, oh God, sorry. I've been in this Lancaster for about 25 years. For the past, I have to cop it all out, I guess. For the past 7 years, I have been doing the Medical Marijuana Collective, and I have taken care of many patients. And I have been discreet. I've never had any robberies. Because I operate by appointment only. I'm not making the $10,000 a day. I'm strictly for the patient. I went through City Hall about 20 times. They know. Okay, so, what am I at? I'm in an industrial area. So, I mean, you can come and get me, whatever. I'm in an industrial area. I've been there, like I said, for 7 years. And strictly by appointment, I don't do any young youth. I don't give medical marijuana to the youth. And my system works. It works beautifully. I've never had a problem. I have many cancer patients that are referred to me from our cancer center and from City of Hope, and I do help them relieve their the symptoms that they have with nausea, appetite, and just the general relief that you get from using medical marijuana, because when it goes into your brain, it takes the edge off the pain that you're, to take the focusing off the pain that you're focusing on. I can't talk. And so in my heart, I know that I've been doing the right thing. And just last week, my daughter's been diagnosed with cancer, and she's 35. So this was what I do. I am not your dispensary with the young kids sitting in the parking lot smoking weed, coming in the dispensary buying weed, going back out to the car, selling it to the friends. You won't see that where I am. I'm in an area where I have a car place next to me, a construction place, and I'm in my little cubby hole, and like I said, I've been there 7 years. I've never had one issue with any of my neighbors. I've never had anything bad to say about me or my business. Let's see. What was I going to say?
Mr. Vice Chair, can we waive her time?
Absolutely, Vice Mayor, absolutely.
I understand.
Take your time.
Oh, sorry. Am I done?
No, you take your time. Please continue.
I'm just so nervous. I'm sorry.
Don't be nervous.
As far as what was said earlier about bank robberies and medical marijuana dispensary robberies and all these things that happen in that area, but so too is it true with the liquor stores and the banks and the jewelry store. That's all too. And if you put that in one section and then you put the marijuana in, you're going to see it's balanced the same. It's how you operate your business. It's how you do it. So I'm not going to buy that medical marijuana creates problems unless we're not regulating it the right way and we're not doing it and focusing on the issues that need to be done. And when I go into my cubby hole over in my little industrial area and I lock the door, there's nobody coming in there till I open it for that patient that I know. And I have their driver's license. I have their doctor's referral. I don't let anybody I don't know through my door. And it's worked for 7 years. It can work. And I have proved that it worked because I'm still standing here. So this is what you have. I mean, I'm not a very good artist, but this is what you have as far as all the places we have in our valley right now. This is what we have.
Stay, hold it up behind the podium there. Yeah, so we can hear you on the microphone there.
Okay,
please.
this is what we have here.
Thank you.
Of what's going on now. So they're here, they're around you, they're there. So really you really need to really consider focusing on the fact that it's not really going to go anywhere. They're going to drive. These are the delivery services. Where you see the marijuana leaves is where you actually have the locations of dispensaries. That's how many we have. There are 14 storefronts and 15 deliveries. But of course, there's probably much more deliveries than that because they can come from down below and come up here. You won't know that they're going to the person down the street. You won't know that your neighbor's receiving her medication because it's all done very discreet. So, that part. I don't know. This is what I had to say is I've been here and it worked. And I want to stay. I've asked for a business license over like 10 times, over and over and again. And I know why, because if I had one, everybody gets one. I understand that. But I am truly the caregiver dispensary. I truly care about the people that come into my place. I'm not only just giving them marijuana. They come in and they talk to me and they tell me their problems and the things that are going on in their lives. And I do the same. We communicate. And they come off and get a load off their chests and they leave relieved. So, do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. First of all, Melly, I want to tell you, I can sympathize with you being nervous. Please relax. Your presentation is worth hearing.
Thank you.
That being said, does your business have a bank account?
Yes, I do. And I also have my seller's permit.
Okay, Jocelyn, is there a difference between the caregiver business as opposed to just a normal dispensary? And I'm trying to wrap my head around the bank account thing as well.
Can I interrupt? I was told that I must have a seller's permit. This was projected through CalNormal organization, the Movement for Medical Marijuana, pushed it through that we were to have a seller's permit. But we didn't have to tell the State Board of Equalization where our supply comes from. We don't have to put that down like who our vendors are. We got that waived.
How convenient.
We got it waived.
Let's go back. I'm kind of curious on what Commissioner Harris's question was in regards to bank accounts and sales tax and things like that. You know, where's that? Is it being generated, not being generated? And I agree. I have to commit. I think this ordinance has to do with, you know, the city's destiny on what they're going to do and how they're going. Not saying that medical marijuana is out. Not saying all these things are an impossibility. I think they have to take this next step to control the destiny of their course. So, but back to that original question, I'm kind of curious.
A number of years ago,
before you answer that, I think where we are right now is at the crux of this ordinance.
That's exactly
right. By having several layers of differing laws, we don't know where we are positioned, and so we need the time to figure that out, so that this conversation. Well, how come you have a bank account, but we're hearing, you know, the federal law prohibits it? Where's the gray area in between, and how did that occur? Not to say that what happened, that how you went about getting yours is wrong. I'm saying it's not a controlled process. It's not a process that everybody can follow as a procedure. So I think that's the crux of why we are discussing this ordinance right now, so that we can get our hands around those issues, so that there's a process, so that there's monitoring, and that maybe your business, the way you've been running for the last 7 years, can be a model. But we need to look at those things.
I understand that.
So Jocelyn, going back to the original question, is there a reason, or is there a difference in the type of marijuana dispensaries that can obtain and keep a bank account as opposed to those that cannot?
the bank account issue is if she's able to maintain a bank account, it's very possible that her particular bank has no idea what the nature of her business is, and that's fine.
That is true. On the bank account, that is true. But as far as
what is the name of your business?
Holistically Yours Collective Care.
Hold on, I'm going to address that, though. Here's the issue, and I can tell you this directly at the Fed. The Fed does not recognize California's marijuana initiative and has not from the start. If you live in federally subsidized property, they don't give a damn what the state says you can do. Okay, if you're in any kind of program that's federally subsidized, then you are subject to removal from that program. Okay, so anyone, even irregardless of what their issue may be, that might be living in some type of program, if it's subsidized by the federal government, there is an issue. And the Fed has come out numerous times as it relates to these things. Colorado's a giant action. But I think the biggest thing is here is we're not passing judgment on any of that. I think the whole mindset of this and where Vice Mayor Chris came from is the fact that we just want to maintain local control based on the regulatory laws that'll come and then define for ourselves here as a community what is appropriate and what's not appropriate. So for anyone that might be in this room that thinks that the city is like, we're not going to have this and we're not doing, that is not the direction that's been given to staff. It's putting something in place based on the laws that were put in place January 1st to allow us to be in a position to make those decisions for ourselves, not to be made at the state level dictating to us what we will do on the local community. And we can honestly have, I think it's appropriate that we as a community have these discussions in the future on what all the issues are as it relates to this. But I think for the purposes of the discussion now, no one's passing judgment on whether marijuana helps people that are in pain. No one's passing judgment on whether it's right or wrong. No one those things other than we have documented issues locally as it relates to those things, and we need to have those discussions. Okay, but that's still not saying that passing judgment on anyone. Right. I think we're here to say we have to do this. It has to be done before March 1st, or we're not going to have the ability to manage that locally. That's it.
Understand? Yeah, are you understanding that?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not something that we're saying you're wrong. It doesn't work. That's not what this ordinance is all about. So
Right.
Okay.
Because because when I went by the last ordinance, number 949, I believe, was that it? 939? The words I stood by were that this prohibition is not intended to interfere with the individual rights of persons to participate in collectives in order to possess or use marijuana for medical purposes as provided for by the voters of the state of California under Prop 215 of the California Legislature under Senate Bill 420. Those lines is what I went by the whole time for the past 7 years, is out of that ordinance.
Well, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Okay.
And the
Now,
best.
Don't go arrest me in the next 5 minutes.
No, we won't do. And
Okay.
yeah. And the best to your daughter.
Can I give you some literature?
Just put it in the bin right there. Yeah.
It's just some.
Yeah, you
things
could leave
are
that map.
helpful. I didn't snitch anybody off.
I knew that.
I just said that's how many there are.
Actually, can you like to look at it?
Sure.
We'll get it back to you at the end.
You could have it and throw it away. It's fine. No, it looks like a 5-year-old did it actually.
Could you make 5 copies, 6 copies of that? Ms. Coker, thank you for being here, and the best to your daughter.
Okay,
Best to your
thank you
daughter.
very much.
Thank you. Mr. Jason Zink.
I appreciate your openness, and I just don't want people like that feeling like second-class citizens or be hiding in the dark. It's not right. Everybody has an uncle, a friend, a neighbor, or somebody that smokes marijuana. This is not a crime thing. I think as time goes by, the newer generation is understanding that we don't want to criminalize people. We want this is a free country. We want people to be free and be able to do what they want as long as I don't like marijuana, don't like the smell or anything like that, but I have no problem with my neighbor or anyone else smoking marijuana. There's a lot of good times people have and everything like that. 60% of the readers in Antelope Valley Press support recreational marijuana. That just shows you. I think this criminalization of marijuana is a thing that police organizations and stuff bump up and stuff like that. One of the problems is, I think, stakeholders. There should be somebody on that commission who owns a liquor store, a tobacco smoke shop, a marijuana dispensary, there's not a stakeholder on this commission. That's wrong. That is wrong. How do you talk to those people if they're not represented here? That's not right. That needs to change. There are 4 dispensaries in Little Rock and 4 in Pear Blossom. There's no crime. This is all imagination in people's head. There's no more crime than this and people doing other things. White people get let go when they get pulled over by a police officer. Black people go to jail. I've seen that so many times in Antelope Valley, I can't even tell you. I wish more time was spent on how we're going to educate our young people in high school about marijuana. If we had this meeting right now, spend an hour, how we're going to educate our young people instead of how we're going to criminalize people, that's where we need to go. That's where we need to focus. There's not one, Helpful Living has a little thing, but there's not one educational thing. Think about it. We have these kids for 4 years. You don't think that we could educate them? Let them know, everybody educated knows between 19 and 21, that's when you can't really hurt your mind too much. You know what I mean? You're growing, your mind matures about 19 to 21. So kids shouldn't smoke until they're 21, really, or drink alcohol or any kind of drugs whatsoever, because their mind is still developing. So what I'm saying here today is we should spend time on education and not criminalization.
Thank you, Mr. Zing. Any comments, questions, discussion? Do I... you have my card? I have 3 other cards. Yeah, I have 3 other cards. David, on none. You just put one in? Oh. David Paul, step up to the podium, sir. I didn't have your card, sir.
Thank you, Vice Chair. This is a special issue to me. You know, I like to say that there's no greater joy than to love and respect the law, and I want you all to understand that I don't have any doubt that anybody here wants the best for our community. And Vice Mayor, yes, we have to have control over what goes on in our city, so that's perfectly understandable. You know, this is like deja vu to me. 6 years ago, and Dr. Brown was the only commissioner on this panel, I stood up here and I said, I made this philosophical argument about children. We're going to deal with this spice issue coming up. And let me start by saying kids should not smoke marijuana. My philosophical argument is, if a child is going to smoke spice versus marijuana, they would have been better smoking the marijuana. My personal view, we talked last night about the campaign. My website, davidpaulformayor.com, is up. If you'll look on there, you'll see 40 years of pictures of me negotiating the party scene, being a person who controlled the element of party. And out of all that experience, I can tell you marijuana is the least harmful of all the mood-altering substances on this planet. Alcohol, tobacco, all these things are much more harmful. And when we tell kids, I understand decent law-abiding people want to respect the law. So if marijuana is against the law, they're against it. But there's a fallacy there because we tell these kids that it's in this class 1 with heroin and cocaine, and they try it and they realize it's not really the demon it was made out to be, and they get the impression that these other drugs are equally built up as bad when they're not, and they try them. That is the gateway. The need to party is not a moral deficit. It's a moral responsibility. People have to alter their mood somehow, and I prefer to do it with participation in government, helping people feel better, helping people love and respect the law. And criminalizing, this pin, I switched it out today, is LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. If you also go to my website, you can see my discussion when Tom Lackey faced off in a debate against a representative from LEAP. He destroyed the argument, explained why marijuana has been demonized. It was a economic thing. DuPont wanted to have synthetic rope, and the natural hemp was the competition, and they squashed marijuana and made it into a demon. Decent people still believe this lie. Like Shia and Sunni think they should kill each other 1,300 years later. You can't wipe that stuff out of your mind. So please understand, I had a discussion with Commissioner Carter in the hall, and he told me that the ordinance does not prohibit anybody that has a legal right to use medical marijuana or the dispensaries. So, but if you shut down the dispensaries, where are people going to get the marijuana they need? That's my point. We can't just close things down and have no recourse. So let's find a way to make this work. That's my recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Appreciate it. Thank you for your comments.
Just to clarify your comment, Mr. Paul, what I stated was this ordinance doesn't prohibit anybody who is legally, by the state of California, licensed to use. That was I said nothing about having the dispensaries. Just clarification.
Any other comments, commissioners? Do I entertain a motion?
So to respond a little bit, if you don't mind, to some of the things that people said, and I'd like to say that I have great confidence that there are people who benefit from the use of medical marijuana and that it can provide great comfort and relief to what condition they might be treating. I think that the issue of recreational use of marijuana is complex and something that we should probably further discuss. With the gentleman that said something about education, I think the Sheriff's Department and the Public Safety Department has spent a great deal of time and effort educating our high school students about the dangers of alcohol and about drug use and driving and distraction and driving and so on, and I think they've done a terrific job on that. The key issue for me, and the reason I would support this, is that the philosophy of the people in Sacramento and the philosophy of the people in the city of Lancaster are very different in many ways, and I think we frequently find ourselves in conflict with the state philosophy and in disagreement with it at the municipal level. So to not take advantage of this moment to maintain control of this issue within the municipality would be foolhardy. If we miss this deadline, my understanding is that your speeches would be after a drive to Sacramento and probably much harder to make than they will at the local level where you actually have pretty good access to have yourself heard. I would anticipate that the City Council and perhaps this Commission will discuss the effective use of medical dispensaries and so on in the future, but I think, and I'm not sure why we're up against a time restraint, but I'm going to take that at face value and therefore support the notion that we support this ordinance for the time being so that we can maintain control in Lancaster.
Okay, so is that a motion then?
No.
Or do I have a couple more comments?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that upon this ordinance passing, it does not in any way alleviate us from going back and changing or eliminating the ordinance. It just protects us for the March deadline.
That is correct.
And again, what's the reason for the March deadline?
There's a provision in the new laws that if a city does not have an ordinance in place expressly prohibiting the cultivation, indoor or outdoor, of marijuana, the state has sole regulatory and licensing authority, and that is effective March 1.
So it sounds to me, for a city to control its own destiny, you want something in place so we don't have everybody stepping on us and telling us what we should do and not do.
If you want to have local control, you have to have it in
Absolutely.
place by March 1,
Absolutely.
yes.
Okay.
One last question before a motion. For someone like this young lady's position where she has a collective already, how is she affected?
I don't want to get into specific personal collectives, so I can't speak to her directly. Nobody has a grandfathered or vested right to operate a dispensary if we have a prohibition in place. Having said that, the state law does not necessarily prohibit collectives. It's commercial medical marijuana activity in dispensaries. Now, the presumption is that it's medical marijuana and they're only providing and selling it to qualified patients. it's very possible that within the state law, collective type behavior is carved out as an exemption. Frankly, I don't know, and I don't know how the state is going to approach it.
Any other thing? Any other questions? Okay, Dr. Brown, you.
I would move that we make a recommendation to the city council to accept this ordinance.
I'll second it.
We have it, a second. Take a vote. Passed. All right, next item on the agenda, NB2. I guess we have an April meeting scheduled. Is that correct, Brett? And it is April 13th, which is election time, day after. So is there some opinion that there's a possibility of, go ahead, Brett.
There's generally election supplies held
Correct.
in the council chambers. The next morning, we'll still be wrapping up from the night before. So the item before you today is to consider canceling or perhaps rescheduling the April meeting.
So how do the commissioners feel as far as rescheduling the meeting or canceling that meeting and moving to our next meeting, which would be May?
We don't have anything in the future that's urgent prior to that, correct?
If there, no, nothing urgent then.
Okay, you got it. Then I'm in favor of it.
Okay, everyone's in favor of it?
Move to cancel.
Move to cancel, second?
Second.
All right. Vote. Okay. County Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, sir. How are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
Good. I could have sworn I just saw you this morning.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
You're right.
And you should have a smile on your face.
I do, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
A big smile.
A big smile. Thanks to Vice Mayor Christ on that one too, huh?
Yeah, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Good morning, Commission, Vice Chairman, to the citizens of Lancaster. My name is Deputy Kit Groupie. I work at Lancaster Sheriff Station for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. I'm here to present the comp stat for the city of Lancaster for the month of December 2015 and Lancaster Station crime statistics. Go ahead there. So we're going to start with December of 2015 violent crimes. In the month of December, there were 53. Property crimes, 364. Violent crime arrests made in the month of December were 87. Property crime arrests were 59, and total arrests were 146. The uniform report numbers that were issued in the month of December, which are our report numbers to the citizens, were 1,572. Lancaster City total Part 1 crime counts.
Could you go back?
Yes, sir.
One frame. How hard would it be to tag each one of those incidents with if they had anything to do with marijuana, anything, for future references?
There are clearance codes that we use when we clear a call. If it was just marijuana related, not necessarily, but by the clearance in the call, if there was an arrest or a citation given, we could track it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Would you?
Did anyone on the commission have any questions in regards to that? Okay. To move on to Lancaster City total Part 1 crime counts by month, year-to-year comparison. We have 420 in December of 14, and we're at 417 for December of 15. We want to move on. We're going to go most active reporting districts for Part 1 crimes in December, and I'm going to break down, some of you on the commission or the chairman, vice mayor, city manager know the breakdowns of the reporting districts, but I'd like to, if you're good with it, for the citizens of the community, just to kind of break down the reporting districts real quick.
Absolutely.
Reporting District 1135 is the area from 10th Street East to 30th Street East and from Avenue H to Avenue J. Part 1 crime count was 66. Reporting District 1137 I'm sorry, 10th Street East to 40th Street East from Avenue J to Avenue L, total of 63 Part 1 crimes. 1127 on the west side of Lancaster, 20th Street West to 50th Street West, and from Avenue I to Avenue K, there was 41. 10th Street West, and I'm sorry, 1126 covers 10th Street West to 20th Street West, and Avenue J to K is 37. Reporting District 1132 is from Sierra Highway to 10th Street East, and from Avenue I to Avenue J with a total of 29. If you'll look, there's the hot spot area for Part 1 crime, and those are within the, that's just the graph showing the hot spot areas that I already explained. Anyone on the commission have any questions in regard to this?
Any questions?
Okay. I'll move on. We're going to go into residential burglaries for the month of December. 1137, 10th Street East to 40th Street East, and Avenue J to Avenue L. Total count of 23. 1135, which I already covered the area, is 19. One that I didn't cover yet is Reporting District 1121, which covers from Sierra Highway to 20th Street West, Avenue H to Avenue I. There was a total of 12 burglaries. 1132, which was covered in the area, is 8. And 1127 is a total of 7. And we're going to go to the graph of the hot spot areas there, and it breaks down the reporting districts on the map.
Hang on. Can I just issue on the burglaries too as well? To put out there, there's been a significant effort made in those two RDs as it relates to burglaries. So some of that is a result of those cases being managed and rollbacks on unreported incidents. So just to clarify that number. So there's been a huge effort by the Sheriff's Department in reporting districts 1135 and 1137 for the last several months. So that's resulted in a significant number of arrests.
Were there any questions, Commission? Okay. Robberies for the month of December. Reporting District 1135, the count is a total of 5. 1127 is 4. 1125 is 2. 1132, total of 2. And 1137, 2. Should be the map of the breakdown in the hotspot areas or the areas where those robberies occurred. And we will move on to Lancaster Sheriff Station's report for, I'm sorry. You have to forgive me, I'm sorry for that. Let me find this here. We'll go to homicides, which I had. Forgive me for that, and I'll read off the screen. The average is 1 for the month of December, if you'll see, which is down from the beginning of the year, or it's equal to the beginning of the year. You had a spike in February through July, but it's gone back down to December of 2015. If you can move on there for me, Josh. The rapes over a period of a year, the average is 7. In December, it was a little up, but has gone down from the summer of 2015. Robberies, the average is 27. We're currently below average. Under 25, they're just above 20 for the month of December. So we had a nice downward spike in the robberies over 2015. And aggravated assaults, the average is 50, and it is currently just around 20 So that has seen a significant downward spiral also. Burglaries, the average is 112. We're approximately right now at about 135. So that has gone up since November. However, from the months July through September, it has gone down also. And larceny thefts, we are at average of 165, and it has gone down since June from December. So you can move on.
Deputy, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Explain real quick to our public. A lot of times I get a lot of questions on larceny. A lot of people say, what is that? Explain larceny to the general public. In
Theft.
Theft.
Theft-based crimes, yes.
Okay. I get a lot of questions on that. They can't determine the truth.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Grand theft vehicles over a year period is, the average is 41, and it looks like we had a spike in the month of December, and we're just above 60. The arsons over a period of year, and I know that we discussed this in the last meeting, it has gone down. In November, we had that spike with an arson suspect that was committing arsons around the boulevard. Basically, those are, how would I put it, flagrant crimes. Those are extreme crimes. So it doesn't happen all year long. I mean, it's very minimal. So when you have a spike in it on the chart, it looks really extreme, but in reality, we're not having, I mean, the average is 6 per year. So when we have 5 or 6 in a month, it puts it off the chart. But now that that arson suspect is in custody, our arson average has gone back down below average. And if we can...
Quick question for you. Just
Yes, sir.
looking at the GTOs, the Grand Theft Autos, GTAs. Our Shave Key guy that got arrested a while back, he ain't out, is he?
Well, that's usually the trend. That's a good point to make, and I'm sure Lieutenant Harris could talk about that, but that goes back to what we talk about with incarceration rates and issues. It's kind of, we see that, and GTA is kind of the one that we talk about all the time, that we see in waves as individuals are released. And then we see a group working together in the area, and then they get arrested, and then we go through a process. And again, that's probably what we're more talking about too, and things that we're seeing with what's happening within the juvenile system, which I want to address more and more, based on issues and how cases are managed differently as far as once they leave the sheriff's department and prior to them getting to the DA's office. Okay, there's an issue.
Yes, sir. We have had some real tough times with juvenile crime this past year, really in particular to our burglaries and our residential daytime burglaries. And they do, obviously, they affect our GTAs as well. We've been working hard on the GTAs, and it is crime rings. A lot of time, crime rings. They should still be in custody, the one that you're talking about. But yeah, it's been a lot of work this year working with the GTAs. It's just we'll arrest a group, and then another group pops up and goes to work, and
Put them in jail, and they have time to teach classes.
Yeah, but it's we've done some PSAs too on this as well. Some of we'll see in the fall, historically in the fall when things start cooling down, we'll have GTAs when people are warming up their cars, going back in their houses. So we've addressed that, and we work on that constantly. But yeah, the rings have been a problem, and we're working on. We have made quite a few arrests, but unfortunately they're still popping up their heads. So.
When you say rings, are you talking about juvenile rings?
Well, no, both some juvenile. We have. I wouldn't say specifically right now. But we do have juvenile rings of suspects for this. But there's adults involved too.
Thank you. Please.
We're going to move on to the Crime Commission report from the station's statistics. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so for the burglary suppression team, felony arrests for the month of December is 26. Felony warrant arrests were 4. Misdemeanor warrant arrests, 1. Vehicles recovered, 2. Ramey warrants, 10. Parole and probation searches, 2. Recovered stolen property monetarily is valued at $3,900. Firearms recovered were 3, and solved burglaries, 24. We'll move on to narcotics arrests made by the narcotics team and also related to narcotics arrests made by the patrol deputies at the station. Felony arrests for patrol were 29, and the narco crew was 2. Misdemeanor arrests for patrol were 29. For the crew, 1. Juveniles, 7. None for the crew. Grams recovered, 1,343.6 by patrol, none by the team. If we move down to methamphetamine powder grams, patrol recovered 588.4 with the narcotics team at 218.1. Cocaine in grams is 0.9 for patrol and 11.9 for the team. And I know it kind of came up last meeting also. The numbers, you see a whole lot more arrests made by patrol, but when we talk about the narcotics team as a whole, they're essentially looking for the bigger entities. With that being said, if you notice the amount of arrests made comparison to the meth powder in grams, you have 218 grams recovered out of a total of 3 arrests by the narcotics team. So the numbers do add up. You're getting the bigger fish, so to say, by less people who are out there and distributing it, and that's what the narcotics team specializes in.
Question, in regards to what we've just recently discussed with the marijuana laws, what exactly, when I see that you had 1,343 grams of marijuana, what exactly does the law state as to the amount of marijuana a person can have? And I mean, how does that work?
Right. Well, the typical site is working as a school deputy or in patrol in the past. Your 11357B section would be possession of marijuana less than 1 ounce. Now, when people are getting cited for these, it's not someone generally with a card or for the medical side of it. These are the people illegally possessing it on the street.
So if they get stopped and they present a card, they're free to go. It's just the ones that don't have a card that have more than 1 ounce.
Right. It depends on, every situation is different because, you know, I've come across personally someone that says they have a card and it's actually a recommendation. Okay. The recommendation, you know, in different encounters doesn't cover, you know, when you're hanging out in front of your friend's house or near a school and you're utilizing or using this marijuana with a recommendation, there's still violations to those laws that people are getting arrested and cited for.
Okay.
I hope I answered the question for you.
Yes.
That's a good point. I was going to say, out of that 1,340 something, you have the felony arrest and misdemeanor arrest. How many of those are part of that? Or do you know?
I don't have that answer for you.
It's something that would be kind of interesting to this commission simply because of this new initiative where the city's going to take a stand. It'd be kind of interesting just to kind of, that can be done.
Right. I'm sure it could be done, and when I get back to the station, I'll bring it up with our narcotics team and run those questions by them, and I'll give you a more definitive answer.
Thank you.
No problem. If we can move on to the land cap team. Felony arrests for the month of December is 40. Misdemeanor arrests, 14. Firearms recovered, 5. And the estimated value of illegal narcotics monetarily recovered is $95,203. And that concludes my presentation for the crime statistics in the city of Lancaster for the month of December.
Thank you, Kit.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kit.
California Highway Patrol.
Yeah, good morning. I haven't had the chance to introduce myself to everybody. I'm the new face. So if you don't mind, I take a brief moment here. Good morning, Vice Chair and Commissioners, members of the Commission. My name is Jesse Holguin. I'm a captain with the California Highway Patrol. I've been appointed as commander of the Antelope Valley area. My last assignment was in Marin County, but I'm very glad to be back in Southern California, and it's an honor to be here. I have 21 years of experience with the department. Most of it has been in Southern California area, but I've worked in different counties, so come with a little bit of experience. Looking forward to working with everybody. As you know, I'll give you some information about what we do, what we've done in the last month, and as we close the year. But it's not specific to Lancaster, but I'm sure it impacts the residents and within the community of Lancaster and everybody else in Antelope Valley. But in general, we were very productive last year. We wound up the year significantly providing a lot of services to motorists in the Antelope Valley area. We had over 5,000 motor services last year, 500 in December. Our driver under the influence traffic collisions increased in December, which is typical to all the Christmas parties and events and whatnot. But overall in the year, we reduced them by almost 20%, which is significantly good. I think a lot of our educational programs and enforcement efforts are paying off. We continue with the very aggressive campaigns, both educational and enforcement with seatbelts. Very successful last year in the greater Antelope Valley area. The reduction was by 15%, so that's very good. We have more compliance with their seatbelts. And then in December, we were very successful with the Chips for Kids event. Collected over 8,600 toys that went to the greater Antelope Valley area, so we were very successful there. Continue with our efforts with reducing mileage death rate. Our fatalities for the area we finished off with 19. So we'll work on that this year. I think that we'll work with some of our neighboring agencies and see if we can come up with some enforcement efforts. And I'm big into educational programs, so hopefully we can get into the communities and stress some of the importance of distracted driver and other programs where I think we can make an impact. So looking forward to working with everybody.
Thank you, Captain. Welcome. Thank you so much. Mr. Franklin, District Attorney's Office.
Morning. I have the December 2015's statistics for filings. For December last month, we filed 234 felonies and 1,492 misdemeanors. And then the year to date for the 2015, the entire year of 2015, for the entire 2015, we filed 2,948 felonies, and in 2014, the entire year was 3,670. So, again, as we have spoken about, virtually all of 2015, that reduction is virtually all due, I think, to Prop 47. As for misdemeanors, it's, again, the same basic anomaly that I've spoken about before. In 2015, the entire year, it's been 7,969, so essentially 8,000. And in 2014, it was 7,762. So slightly more in 2015. So that's clearly the trend, and I don't see that anything changing in the future on that. I would comment just one moment too on just an observation looking at those Grand Theft Auto statistics, and I concur, it does go in waves, but I would also indicate that that's the type of crime that AB 109, if you're sentenced to state prison, you would serve your time locally, so to speak. That is to say, your state prison sentence would be performed at, Twin Towers or Pitches, Wayside. And I'd also indicate that there does appear to be that, trying to marginalize it a little bit. And again, on a grand theft auto, if that vehicle is worth less than $950, you've got a misdemeanor filing, not a felony. So again, we see the AB 109 and the Prop 47 kind of raising its head. But pending any questions, that would conclude my portion.
Commissioners? Nothing? Good. Thank you, Mr. Franklin. Jocelyn, anything?
No, I think I've taken up enough of your time today. Thanks.
Mr. DeRico.
And I as well, sir. Thank you.
Rick Cook, anything? Welcome aboard.
Easier for me to speak standing up than sitting down. And excuse my speech impediment. I have a device in my mouth to help with some related jaw issues when I was 16 years old and hit a tree.
Oh.
So, thank you once again, Commission, for allowing us to come here. It's a great honor to speak on behalf of Senator Renner. To give you an update of where she is right now, the legislative package is still being approved by the Republican caucus that I can present to you, but she is going to focus. She issued a statement for you. She's going to focus on public safety, water, education, and small businesses. She was very pleased to recognize the as January as Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and she honored Courage Worldwide and Jenny Williamson, and the founder and CEO on the Senate floor on January 11th. Dignity Health partnered with CWW as well as to teach emergency room attendants how to spot victims of human trafficking. She was quite pleased to be able to do that. Some of the bills that she authored and co-authored last year that are still in legislation waiting to be presented is SB 49, which is a special election bill, that if no one was running against somebody, we didn't have to hold an election, saving cities and counties lots of money. SB 54, sex offender registry. SB 57, which is law enforcement on immigration felons. SB 526, personal income taxes. And by the way, this was just approved by committee, so it should go to the Assembly soon, which is flexibility when somebody gets a divorce, who's responsible for paying the income tax on that. SB 12X1, which is California Transportation Commission, which is still being considered as well. The ones that did fail, which was Senate Constitution Amendment 8, which would require any county with a population over 2 million to expand to 5 to 7. That was ordered and enacted by Senator Mendoza. And as well as Greenhouse Tax Reduction Fund, which is SB 61, that died, and that's prohibiting cap and trade to fund any more high-speed rail issues. So that's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Rick.
Okay, this part of the meeting, any items that are not on the agenda, the general public's welcome to speak. Fill out a speaker's card, hand it in, and you have limited 3 minutes. Mr. Jason Zink.
First, I just want to thank all of you guys for your hard work in making Antelope Valley better. But I would like to see more stakeholders on this commission from the alcohol and tobacco and marijuana appointed to the board. Just for instance, if there's a liquor store person there, then we could talk about maybe having a class where all the clerks have to go through a special class like you have to with food handling. You have to do a class on that, every liquor store owner's person. What's that? That's what they're doing. Huh? We've been discussing that. Oh, have you? Okay, and then make sure those people get paid $15 an hour. Those people aren't getting paid minimum wage. So then they'd have a reason to think about losing a good job to that. There is not enough education. I disagree. There is not enough education on alcohol, driver's education, and what a felony is. These kids don't know what a felony is. So, the worst thing I had, I was in the courtroom, and the judge gave him a felony and stuff, and the kid went to his mom and says, "What's a felony?" And he just went to it. That's not right. These kids, these public defenders should have to go and speak with these kids about what's really going on. What's going on at Antelope Valley Courthouse is a crime that they're giving felonies to these young people. This is going to put a weight on their shoulders, but a weight on society's shoulders, because these kids are going to be down forever. So we have to think about that. Statistics. I'd like to see statistics on suicides, drug overdoses, child abuse, and heroin. I heard the president talk about it. Maybe it's just an East Coast problem. Do we have a problem about it in Antelope Valley? Maybe the healthcare district could do statistics on that, and Child Services could also do a report and be part of this thing. AV Court with Rogers and Yelp. Rogers, a friend of mine went to get a judgment on a tenant for $8,000, and Rogers says, "Well, you're never going to collect it, so you're denied the $8,000. That person ruined that house. That's not right for a judge. Think about it. You own a house and judges could tell you can't get a judgment against a person because you'll never collect. That's not right. Yelp, he's not giving people a chance a day in order to testify, to have their hearing in court by a jury trial. He just denies them, and that's not right. Postcards, I need a little bit more time. Postcards and emails. When a police officer goes to someone's house, he should be able to hit a button that goes to the city of Lancaster, to where people, every property is managed has to get a thing from the city, right? An application for their house. Well, why can't they pay an extra $10 for something to be sent to them that a police officer showed up to that house, so the landlord knows? DeGreco, you were there probably a couple years ago. Oh, what is it? The Araco, or I don't know. Lee, how about that?
Mr. Zink.
Okay.
Mr. Zink, thank you.
No, I need you guys to know this.
Appreciate your time. We have 3 minutes for we got more speaker cards here. Mr. Zink.
Six people came to that house, and 6 times
Mr.
officers
Zink.
came to that house over a year, and the
Mr.
guy didn't
Zink.
know it, and he ended up losing his house.
Mr.
Last
Zink,
thing.
we're done.
Antelope Valley
We're
Court.
done, sir. We're
We
done.
needed Antelope Valley Community Service
Done, sir.
District.
Officers, please. Miss Shannon McDonald.
Good morning. I haven't seen you guys in a while either. My name is Shannon McDonald, in case some of you don't know who I am. I came today to discuss the issue on the AB 58, the school safety plans that have to actually be, from my understanding of reading the legislation that was introduced by Assemblymember Rodriguez. I'm totally against it. I just feel like I'm getting ready to have 4 of my own children. I have 3 right now in Lancaster schools, and I'm getting ready to have my 3-year-old in as well. And it's not really making me, it's the wording really, the language, and because these are legal documents, I'm going to be I'm not happy about it. Just a few things I ran down. A couple of words in particular are tactical response, violent crime, active shooter drills. By the way, I've seen some of these active shooter drills. I'm not impressed. I feel like I think that they cause a lot more harm than good. I think that some of these things should be discussed with our children at home by parents, and not our children have to be exposed to teachers who are supposedly the criminal, and they're going in and they're telling the kids, they're grabbing a kid as a hostage, telling them I'm going to kill you, and the kids later on are coming and saying, oh my gosh, to see my teacher in that, you don't know who you can trust. And so we're dealing with issues now of the future of our kids, where now we're going to teach them to live in fear too. Now we're going to tell them that they can't trust a single person, where they always got to be a certain way. And I feel like I'd be better off teaching my own children. I feel like I have 4 degrees. If it's going to be more about playing Call of Duty and things like this, I think that I'd be better off taking my children out of public school. And I don't want to do that. I'm actually going to this is something for the school board, but it's not just a school board issue. This is something that everybody, the Criminal Justice Commission is going to have to get with the city council and the superintendent of the school district. Everybody has to get together about this because there has to be something in writing, just like the issue with the March deadline, with the other issue that we were discussing, you guys were discussing. It's the same thing with this in a sense where there's, in October of 2016, there has to be some kind of school safety plan. Oh, yeah. I just wanted to also bring up the fact that the California Constitution requires the state to reimburse local agencies and school districts for certain costs mandated by the state. Statutory provisions establish procedures for making that reimbursement. That's fine, but that does sound like job opportunity for me. I look at it like this. There's money out there, then I need to be pulled in somewhere to help in some way. I've been sitting here, I'm offering my services, for you guys to help. This is my city, too. I'm very, very possessive over my city. So anything that I can do to help, I'm, again, letting you know that. So that was something that this is not going to be something that can be discussed or taken care of overnight. So I just thought I'd bring it up to you guys because I definitely want to be a part of this discussion. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Michael Rivas. Michael's still here? David Paul.
Mr. Vice Chair and Commissioners, hello again. It's a wonderful opportunity to be here, and I just would like to close out on what addiction is. Addiction is a pathological relationship to a mood-altering event or substance that has life-threatening consequences. That's why hope is the greatest antidote for despair, and that's why people in this community want to see this commission and the council move progressively towards the future. There are many things to enjoy and appreciate, and there's a lot of fear that goes around the marijuana issue, and I wish it wasn't so, but the choice between the kid, we have people in nuclear missile silos smoking spice because they can't use marijuana. The spice evades the drug testing. So it defeats the purpose. We're creating this situation where we're making the alternative worse than the first choice. And yeah, there is not enough money. Shannon talked about how the state is supposed to repay. That's just the law. It doesn't really work like that. It works the way this community decides we're going to aim our focus. And I just want us to be open and embrace the future and understand that there are many more issues out there more serious than marijuana. These drug cartels that make all the money, if we can't take the tax, it goes back to the cartel. If the people that have a legitimate need for marijuana can't find a dispensary, they're going to go on the street and buy it, and it's further going to funnel crime. So these are all the things that we have to consider, and hopefully in next year when they make recreational use legal, all of this will go away. But in the meantime, let's be compassionate and understand that some people have a legitimate therapeutic need to use medical marijuana, and it is much greater than the other alternatives. So let's love one another and just get along. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore in the audience. How are you, sir? I recognize you, so I just wanted to make sure I recognize you. Anything new? Anything new?
We're making good progress. Would you go to the podium? Oh, certainly. I didn't turn in the card, but I'm more.
No, that's okay. I saw you, and you've been so gracious. So.
Right. We are making good progress. We've been working with the city to improve the service provided to the LASD, and we also want to thank the great improvements that you guys are making in utilization of the system. It's remarkable. If you've noticed in the newspaper, there's been a lot of action with LEAPS. We have now prepared a monthly newsletter putting out that in coordination with the LASD as to the number of deployments, how many of the arrests were assisted by LEAPS. I have some copies of that today. If you'd like to receive a copy of that, the last one that was sent to Mr. Mozigian and Mr. D'Erico.
Please.
I'd be happy to provide those to you. And once again, Thank you very, very much. Your guys that are on the dispatch, the training that's going on is absolutely superb.
Mr. Moore, thank you so much. We appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you, and we would like a copy of that.
I've got them here. Be happy to give it to you.
Yeah, thank you to you and your team for the support that you give the LASD
It is
with
a team between
LIPS.
the City of Lancaster, LASD, and ADLC. It is
Any force multiplier is a good thing.
Thank you.
Any comments, commissioners?
I just want to make one comment to Mr. Paul. I want you to know that I'll sleep much better knowing that the people in the missile silos are smoking marijuana instead of spice.
That's classic, Dr. Brown. I appreciate it. Very good. Thank you, everyone. Vice Mayor Chris, thank you, sir. Councilman Rajmali, thank you for being here, sir. Prayers out to Commissioner Rodriguez and her family. Huge, huge prayers for you. For you even being here, just thank you. I know, I can only imagine what you're going through, so thank you for being here, and many, many prayers for you. So, anything else? If nothing else, we stand adjourned until February 10th, 2016 at 10 a.m. Thank you for being here.
Nice to meet you.
Take care. Okay, yeah.
You would go to the key word is judicial council. Just like
I meant to come and get you.
Google, I don't have
for
it
the
in
meeting.
front of me, but Google LA. It would be in Sacramento. Well, it would be, I'm sorry, it would be Sacramento. Just up in the city of Sacramento. But just judicial council for judge.